Nowadays, good is not good enough anymore. You need to stand out, and you need to stand out from the crowd for the right reasons.
They're speakers, authors, and real-life rock stars, bringing you life-changing thoughts that rock, taking conversation all the way to 11.
Most shows only go to 10.
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? These go to 11.
This is Thoughts That Rock. Now, here are your hosts, Jim Knight and Brant Menswar.
What's up? How's everybody doing? It is your favorite podcast, Thoughts That Rock. Jim, tell them what we do around these parts these days.
Well, we're in two different states now, but I think we still do the same thing. We basically are trying to help people out. We help their lives get a little bit better, and we decided this year to turn our podcast into a how-to podcast. We're just trying to solve problems, a few issues, obstacles you might be dealing with, and we come up with a topic, then we go find somebody who's an expert on that and have a little chat. And so far, it's been successful for at least a dozen people.
At least. Maybe a baker's dozen.
13, baby. 13.
We're almost there. Well, listen, today's no different. We have the incomparable Sylvie Giusto as our guest, talking about how to discover your fair advantage, right? How to use your fair advantage. Sylvie is an Austrian powerhouse. She speaks, I think, 5 languages, one of the most brilliant people we know. She is a multiple author. Her latest book of How to Discover Your Fair Advantage has just come out. It is literally like a textbook as to how to stand out from the crowd, right? How to take advantage of all of your natural born gifts. And it is something that we were thrilled. We've wanted her on the show for a long time. She is in the speaker world. She's legendary. Very, very involved with the National Speakers Association, the host of many, many masterminds. She's part of my mastermind group with 5 other speakers. And, we really are just blessed to have her sharing some of her wisdom. She just finished, as you know, debuting her new keynote at the NSA conference, Influence Conference in Orlando, where she brought technology that we were laughing about, but that would make Tony Stark blush to the crowd, right?
Yeah, and man, I wish there's a way to see the video. I know that we have a copy of something she was doing, but people have taken video, obviously, since then. Here she is in front of a couple thousand of our clan, our speaker group.
Yep.
She's standing in the middle of I don't know, equations, a brain. She's able to grab the Tesseract cube. It's like, it really is. I mean, you joke, but she is, and we said this on the episode, she's like the Tony Stark of the speaker industry right now. No slides with all this technology. And we saw her. Now, you've known her a little bit longer, but we saw her a few years ago when we were doing an event, and we joked about it on the episode that we opened up for her. But we did a half-day certified rock star. And then she came in and blew the roof off the joint. And if she just did that, that would be enough. Now with this technology, I think people were trying to think, how can I use this? And what? Like, it was a mind blow, but it was cool. I mean, this is how she is. She's been working on this for a couple of years. And by the time we all adapt it, she'll be on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think what's amazing, what people are going to really get out of this episode is, it's one thing to know theory, right? Yeah. It's another thing to put out this theory of what your fair advantage is. It's another thing to live it and prove it. And that's literally what she just did by sort of putting out her fair advantage in a world of thousands of speakers that they're going to have to level their game up if they want to keep up pace. And that is amazing. And what people will discover in this episode, how to discover your fair advantage and stand out from the crowd. You're going to love, love, love Sylvie. Listen to what she had to say.
Yeah, check it out. Boom. There she is.
The incredible, incomparable Sylvie Giusto is in the house. We are so excited. Sylvie, welcome to Thoughts That Rock.
Oh my God, you cannot even imagine how excited I am. If I would have three choices, choice number one, a dinner with George Clooney.
Okay.
Choice number two, unlimited shopping spree at Gucci. Or choice number three, be a guest on podcast. Dot that rock.
Yes.
It wouldn't even take 7 seconds. It wouldn't even take a blink of an eye, and my choice would be clear. What an honor to be with you guys. My favorite podcast, and don't tell anybody else, the only one I actually listen to.
Awesome. I'm not sure you
Well,
actually said we were number one or number two, but we're in the top three choices.
we're top three.
Yes.
And if you take the first two away, we're number one.
Well,
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
exactly. You would always be the
George
first choice.
Clooney. Let him take his Nespresso somewhere else.
Yeah.
Listen, we've known Sylvie for many years.
Yeah.
We've actually had the good fortune of doing a few gigs together where we sort of back to back did sessions together for clients.
We
And
opened for her. That's how I look.
We did. We did.
Yeah.
We warmed up the crowd, and then she actually educated them,
Yeah.
which was good for them because they paid way too much for our bullshit.
We were like the
But that's
jugglers. We were like the comedians. The warm-up. Yeah.
Wait, what? They paid you?
Well, I mean, in food only. So we're thrilled. Sylvie, beyond being, as you heard in the intro, just legendary in our industry. One of the sweetest, kindest, most generous people I know.
Thank you.
And I was talking about Sylvie.
Oh,
and
sorry.
The idea that she's here, she's got a new book that we're going to sort of talk a little bit about through her advice. She just debuted her new keynote, which includes technology that Tony Stark would be proud of.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. She is basically bringing Minority Report technology to the speaking world and making the rest of us look like fools with slides. And so thank you for that, Sylvie. We appreciate you making us all look like we're the Flintstones while you're the Jets.
Yeah.
That is not fair.
She is the Tony Stark of the NSA. I love that.
She is.
Yeah.
She is. She's Iron Woman. That's who she is. She is Iron Woman. Is there an Iron Woman, Jim?
Well, there's actually an Iron Heart, which is about to come out in the MCU this next year. They debuted her in that last Black Panther movie. So, yeah, there's no Iron Woman, but there's Iron Heart, which actually sounds better for Sylvie.
Sylvie, Jim is a Marvel expert. I don't know if you know this or not. He is a Marvel expert. If you have any questions in the history of Marvel, Jim will tell you not only who they were, when they debuted, and what episode of the comics they were
not
in.
that bad. Star Trek.
I bet this episode will be very short if Jim finds out that I don't even have a TV in my home. He's just going to say, oh, off. We're not going to talk.
No, it's good.
That's your fair advantage.
Yeah.
That's why you are so successful and we are not.
That's right. Exactly. But you have a boat. You have a view. You have some awesome things.
I have a boat. And I'm very lucky to say that even Brand has been on this boat despite his fear of boats and water. And he drove the boat. I was very impressed, like a rock star.
Yes. I did have to sit on her lap and she had to pet my head for the entire way. But you know what? I did it. It was
worth it. Just say it was worth it.
It was worth it. It was worth it. Well, we're going to get right to this. I know your topic today is how to discover your fair advantage. So what is your first thought that rocks around how people can discover their fair advantage?
Well, first of all, you need to understand what your fair advantage is, right? It is what makes you unique, what makes you a category of one. If you offer something, for example, that nobody has to offer, like I just did at NSA, at Influence, it fits very well into this topic, because nowadays, good is not good enough anymore. You need to stand out, and you need to stand out from the crowd for the right reasons. And so throughout my career, and when we, for example, spoke at events together, very often when I ask audience members, what is unique about you? What is something you stand out for? Their responses are usually quite average, right? Everybody says something like, well, I am a better communicator, or I offer better customer service, or my products are of higher quality. But I promise you, if I would walk over to the next person who offers something similar, they would say, oh, no, I'm actually a better communicator than he or she or they are, right? So very often when we describe what is unique about us, we unfortunately bring ourselves into a comparison trap, because there will always be somebody out there who is better in what you consider to be your unique selling point. And so at one point, I decided to sit down over the course of 3.5 years, a lot of research, and write a book that helps people to go on a very intense journey of self discovery, to find out what they actually stand out for and what is unique about them. What is one out of 15 unique selling points where they can say, this is just me, a category of one. Nobody can offer this in this combination of those 15 unique selling points. And everything with the goal to be more visible. Because you work with leaders and professionals around the world as well, and you know how important visibility in an organization is. And I describe 4 different levels of visibility. The first one, very often professionals in the workplace are invisible. They just blend in. If this is your conscious choice, congratulations, you have done everything right. If you want to blend in, blend in. But unfortunately, very often for people, it's an unconscious choice. They blend in and they don't know why they don't stand out and don't make it into visibility level number 3, which is being visible. But there is another challenge, and I faced that challenge myself for many years. I was visible, but for the wrong things. I was visible for being a hard worker, for example. I was that busy bee where everybody knew they can drop off whatever they want on my desk and I will take care of. But that doesn't get you promoted. That doesn't get you hired from other organizations. In fact, it's a problem because people know, oh, we're going to keep her because I can drop off everything at her table and it's going to be taken care of. So at least you want to reach visibility level 3, where you discovered your fair advantage, where you know what is unique about yourself, and where people know you for that one unique element in your portfolio of traits. But visibility on stereotypes is if people know about your fair advantage, if you have discovered it, but if you have also communicated in a way that they can talk about it, even if you aren't in the room. When opportunities come up in the C-suite or wherever, and somebody says, we have this challenge in our organization, and then somebody in this room instantly drops your name because they know you are the right person at this moment to help with that challenge. And your goal should be to move up in visibility levels to that last visibility level being referable. And you can only do that by starting the journey yourself and being true to yourself. What is unique about you? Where are you a category of one?
I love that.
So I have a question then, because this is very interesting to me. I would assume, well, I'm gonna hold off on Sylvie for a second because I would assume Sylvie knows what that category of one is. I'm interested,
Mhm.
Brant, what you think your fair advantage. What would that category be? What would people say you stand out for? Or maybe at least what you think you stand out for.
Being a sexy, handsome beast,
Right, right.
probably first.
And now what everybody else thinks about you.
I would say it would have to be the concept of black sheep values. It's something that I created. I think if when people hear black sheep, they think of me now, hopefully for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons that Sylvie just sort of talked through.
Yeah.
But I would say that that's it, and hopefully being presented an opportunity to explain even further when people have an idea of what I'm talking about, but giving me the opportunity to take it a little bit deeper. That I don't know, Sylvie, would you agree that would be my thing, or is that not?
Yes and no. It is one of a 15 because the reality is that your fair advantage is a combination of 15 unique selling points. You might find somebody else who talks about values the same way like you do and just calls it differently than black sheep theory, right?
Yeah.
So while it is uniquely what I would say your expertise and thought leadership, which is one of the 15 points that I describe, it is just one. So we would have to identify the other 14 ones in which way that you bring that expertise and thought leadership, for example, into the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to
So, Jim,
say
I know one of 14 of my.
one of 14.
There are 14 that I have no friggin' idea, but I do have one.
Yes.
When I was listening to Sylvie the first time talking about it, like I wasn't thinking so much black sheep. You're right. I think now, because I think you've redefined what that means. We've talked about that a lot on the show. I almost go deeper, and it's really one of your values. I go creativity. Like I know you, and I think people would say this about you, that you're very, very creative in how you look at everything. And the byproduct has been black sheep values. But you already do this when it comes to technology, helping people brand themselves, looking at things from a different perspective, I think, than somebody that's just going through the nuts and the bolts, or as we like to say, practical, tactical approach. I think that, again, that's probably the Sylvie here point. It might be one of 14 things that help make up.
That's
but
two of 14 now. So thank
Two
you.
of 14, yes. Do you want to know about the other 12 one?
Yeah, well, if you're going to tell me, you're going to say 12 more really nice things about me, I would love to hear.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I give you a rough overview if you don't mind, right?
yes.
Oh, let's do it.
One of your unique one of your unique selling points are your values and your beliefs. So I help readers to identify their values and beliefs because you bring your work to the workplace and to your daily life with specific core values. Now, here on this podcast, I'm not going to go through the embarrassment to talk about values and beliefs because let's just be honest and let's make sure it stays here on the internet. Everything I know about values and beliefs, I have learned from Brent.
Yeah.
And so there is a short version of his immense knowledge that has here about values and belief in this book, and I actually asked him for permission if I can use one term specifically, which is identify your non-negotiables, right? Those that make you crazy if you don't hold them up and if others. But there is more. Brent and everybody listening, you have an original story. You have a past. You might have been born into a family of 18 children. That says something about you and your team skills, for example. You might have grown up in poverty. That says something about you as a professional. I grew up in a multicultural family. Not sure if you have noticed, but I have an accent.
What?
And so my multicultural background and the history I have is also a unique selling point that helps me nowadays because usually I get hired for international audiences. Or your natural talents. We all are born with a set of natural talents, something that we haven't learned, something where we didn't go through a training, something that always felt natural to us. And when you say, Jim, creativity it is for Brand, that is, for example, a natural talent. Probably Brand very often looks at people and thinks, why is that so boring? Why is that so complicated to come up with something more creative?
Yeah.
Oh, it's easy to him because he's born with that DNA. And if you look back into your childhood, you will find a lot of proof already for that creativity that you showed in different ways than nowadays, but you are just born with that DNA. Your experiences and lessons learned, both of you have a tremendous career and you have taken away lessons that others can benefit and lessons that nobody else other than you have made. Or what is your expertise and thought leadership? That's what you just said with Black Sheep. And so I could go on and on and on until the last thing that I call fun facts. And then, yes, obviously, Brand is a sexy beast, sexy handsome beast. That might be the last fact, the fun fact about him. But in my case, for example, it is I run buildings. I'm one of those crazy people who go into dark, stinky stairwells and run up the One World Trade Center or the Rockefeller Center or the Empire State Building. And you might think that fun fact is just a fun fact and not important. But what does it actually say about, for example, my discipline or my dedication or my competitive thinking? So throughout the book, I help you to identify those unique selling points, but also turn them into language that they instantly sound valuable to the decision maker in front of you.
I like it.
Fun fact about Jim and I,
Yeah.
we met 30 years ago without knowing it
Yeah.
on the set of Problem Child 2, the movie, because we happened to both be in the same scene that was being filmed at Universal, where we were on a ride and everybody was puking. Jim and I were two of the people who were puking, but never met each other during that time.
Oh
And
my
we didn't even know that we were both there until a few years, maybe 5-6 years ago. We were doing an event together, and we were putting this slide together. And the first one of us was like, I was in a movie called Problem Child 2. And the other one was like, wait, what? I was in Problem Child 2.
Oh my God! Yeah,
And it's the
I
only
wish I would
movie.
have. I wish I would have known that example prior to publishing the book. It would have been a perfect example to how to communicate something that sounds just horrible to others and make it a unique selling point to yourself.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Truth.
Yeah.
Well, another fun fact about me, I have a fear of getting shocked, and I know how to sex an alligator only because I worked on an alligator insemination program, but that's a different topic. And also, I don't know if you can tell, Sylvie, I also have an accent, but it's perfect for the backwoods in the Southeast. I get a lot of gigs for that, which is fan. I own the
You own it. Yes, I
backwater.
do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually,
So
let me share a quick story, if you don't
yeah.
mind, about that accent. Because one, and I think it's the hardest chapter in the entire book, is to identify what is unique about you compared to your competitors. Especially with competitors, we instantly jump into that comparison trap and say, well, we can do this better, faster, or with more quality. And I did the same until the following happened. One day I was invited to go on a TV show in New York City to talk about a politician and his public persona. And I instantly jumped on that opportunity, went into the studio, and somehow became a regular guest on that TV show. I was sitting in between all those well spoken political experts who used so sophisticated words that just sounded amazing to me. And in the evening, when I watched the show myself, I hated it. I hated it because they sounded so picture perfect American with so eloquent language. And so at one point, I just approached the producer and said, I have no idea why you invite me again and again and again, because this mess here, right, doesn't make any sense to me. And he said something that changed my trajectory forever. He said, that's the reason why we invite you, because you sound like an international expert and you say things so simple that everybody in front of the TV understands you, but they don't understand the political experts. So, why am I sharing this story? Throughout that journey of self discovery, you might even identify perceived weaknesses, things that you thought don't help you, which are actually your superpowers. And like Jim nowadays with his Texan accent, I totally embrace mine as well. And again, find myself in particular in front of international audiences.
I love it. And that's why we're doing German accents the rest of the episode. All of it.
Yeah, you just have to yell. From now on, just yell
That's
everything and
it.
everybody
That's the
will
secret.
think it's German.
All right, we got to hear some more goodness. I mean, what is your next thought that rocks?
Well, once you have discovered your fair advantage, you need to learn how to communicate it, right? Because it doesn't just help that you know it yourself. Now you need to spread it with the world. So how can you communicate your fair advantage? First of all, in a concise and in a creative way. Let's talk about concise. Nobody likes and enjoys to listen to long stories. You need to dim down your fair advantage to the main points, and those main points need to be of value to the listener. And second, you need to tell it in a creative way because nobody likes to listen to boring stories. So I give you an example. Rather than giving my background in a way that I said, well, I was born in so and so and I grew up there and there, one of my taglines is always that I say, I'm Austrian by birth, French in my heart, Italian in my kitchen, German in my work ethic, and American by choice. And then people always think, oh, they know subconsciously what I'm trying to say with that. I don't need to tell them I have a multicultural background from those 4 countries. I embed them into something creative that always wants them to say, tell me more, right? And so in the book, I give you a lot of advice how to phrase things differently. And in a particular, if they have some negative hue. So what do I mean by that? Let's just imagine you had a really difficult childhood. You grew up in poverty or you went through some trauma. I totally encourage you to use this as your fair advantage, but you don't want others to feel bad when you tell them about them. So rather than going into the details, what happened, I encourage readers and help them to communicate in a way that showcases the learnings, the great things that came out of that history, right, of that story. Or you failed as an entrepreneur. This is something you might not want to share with the world, and I encourage you to share it with the world because we all know what you have learned from that journey. It is your superpower and it is your fair advantage. Or one of the chapters, for example, covers your voluntarism and your activism, what you stand for. And everybody loves if you volunteer for children and for pets, although you don't want to be the crazy cat lady. But it always becomes a very fine line when you, for example, very active in politics or in religions. And you always need to consider that when you communicate then as your fair advantage, that you might at least offend half of your audience. But again, there are ways to communicate that rather than going into the details and becoming obsessive what you do in that area. You can communicate the bigger picture that you stand for without actually telling them what party you support, right? So there are ways where you can communicate very sensitive topics in a very concise, very strategic, and very creative way.
I love it. That's great. And it
And
reminds me because Brant really offends half our audience and I offend the other half. So it's great.
True.
We have no, we
Wow.
have no audience because
By
of this.
design.
But he's good looking and sexy and handsome.
That's
So I'm just saying,
And I have hair.
there's an additional advantage.
That's right. That's exactly right. I think it's, it reminds me, last night I caught an episode of America's Got Talent and they had a guy on who was, I think he was born without legs. And he, very inspirational, was doing just incredible things without legs, climbing ropes and lifting weights and doing all kinds of things, walking on his hands basically is what he had done. But, his backstory was that in high school, his mother got him into wrestling and he lost 200 straight matches before he won a match and then became one of the top 3 wrestlers in the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so, this idea of turning your disadvantage into an advantage, to me, it's just that was this kid's story. And he's turned it into this incredible inspirational message to, what are you going to bitch about? You're having a bad day. You got a flat tire.
Yeah.
This kid was born without legs and is doing amazing, amazing things and not complaining and not looking at it as a disadvantage. I think you're right. I think it's a challenge. And I guess my question would be, how do you flip that script from looking at something that's really potentially traumatic or you view as a disadvantage into an opportunity to be positive? How do you go about doing that?
I have a solution for you. The book is not just a textbook, but again, you can see here, it's
Yes.
kind of a combination of textbook and
Yes.
workbook. And
Yes.
I ask you more than 400 questions. And
Yes.
if you do the hard work, if you really do the hard work and answer those questions, you will find those perceived weaknesses that we can turn into an advantage, where you will find out that is you, that is truly you, that is your category of one. And
Mm.
the other than identifying it, the art is in communicating it also in a consistent way, and to have the guts to communicate it, to stand by it, but also in thousands of places. So when I talk about the fair advantage, yes, step one is to identify it. Step two is to communicate it. And then step three is to tell it the entire world in all touch points that you have.
Mm.
Now, not everybody will read your long bio or your long intro where you can add in all those unique selling points. But very often it's the small places. I use it in my email signature. My
Mm.
email signature says keynote speaker and wearer of many hats.
Mm.
That's my way to tell you I am multitasking,
Mhm.
right? You can use it on your voicemail. You
Mhm.
can use it as a tagline in your LinkedIn profile. You can use it on 1,000 places. I use it as my intro when I meet people, when I talk to them, right? I use it as my elevator pitch. So, one part of the book is also to show you that you need to have the guts to tell people how unique you are, and you cannot expect that they find it out. Now, the
Yeah.
example that you shared is wonderful, but it's very obvious, visible. So we aren't even, I don't want to say gifted with that, but very often we don't have the chance to instantly showcase what is unique about us. So you need to have the self confidence to tell people about it.
Yeah. You need to peacock a little bit, is what we
Mhm.
would say in
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
South.
Yes.
My
That's right.
I think well, first off, my email signature says wearer of many hats, but with the top cut out because you got to make sure the spikes can come through. I just posted something this week that, and I reference this a lot. I do think that if people were to start thinking about things happening for them versus to
Mhm.
them, and I know that's more of a mindset versus the physical, but I think you could put that in almost any light. If people were going through life, and I know it's easier said than done because people do go through a lot, their circumstances, their environment, society, what they're taught, all of these learned behaviors. But if somehow they could ground themselves enough to say, I'm going to use this to my advantage. Yes, I might be not as good looking. I might be shorter. I might have this quirk. I might have, like you were talking about in that example, Brant, maybe I don't have any legs. How could I use this to not just better myself, but in some of these people who will
Mhm.
inspire and motivate, they will in fact impact and influence other people. And for whatever reason, I mean, there's a ton of statistics around this that those people who just live that positive mindset, they live longer, they live healthier for whatever reason, they have less diseases. Not 100%, but certainly their lifestyle is a little bit better.
Mhm.
I think yes, answering the 400 questions in the book, Sylvie, I think is, especially for those that don't know where to start, that's an
Mhm.
awesome place to get that granular and get that much detail. Because I would guess even if they don't arrive at their journey, the simple act of going through that process, they're gonna enhance and amp up their life. I have to believe that, right?
Yes,
That's what you
yes, and
think.
you're absolutely right. The first page in the book says everything you need to leverage your fair advantage is already inside of you.
Yeah.
There is nothing you're going to come up with that is new to you. You just need to really dig deep and unbury the amazing things that you already have inside of you, because otherwise, it would be an unfair advantage. You would try to fake it till you make it. And we all know that this is not a successful approach long term. So everything is already inside of you. But unfortunately, we rarely take the time to really identify it and unbury it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I like it.
I like that. One of the things, it was a book I just was reading.
Culture that rocks.
Bob Proctor, another book. Bob Proctor's latest book, or Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of one of the things he talks about in that is it's not fake it till you make it, it's fake it till you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very different idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to act before you're ready,
Mm-hmm.
and if you do it enough, you convince yourself that you're capable, and then you take it from there. And I think that's I think you're right. I think it's difficult, but it's an interesting thought for me, because I've always looked at that fake it till you make it as a negative
Mm-hmm.
thing, especially in the last 5-10 years, as people have sort of harped on that as not being a great idea. But this idea to fake it till you believe it is sort of sometimes putting action to things that you might not be confident in yet, but convincing yourself that you're capable. And I think that's especially when you're talking about doing deep dives and finding out sort of the dig of values and archaeology as to the things that you need to uncover about yourself, can be scary and intimidating and painful for many people. And so this idea that you have to have it all figured out before you start employing things and releasing them into the wild is just not true. I mean, I think it's part of the process. And the more that we get confident enough to actually release these things, the more the world will respond and help us in that journey. At least that's what I'm choosing to believe.
Which is a wonderful lead up to thought number 3.
Let's do it.
Sorry for just taking over the show, but
it's your show now.
But it fits so perfectly, which was how to best sabotage your fear advantage. And it leads exactly into this idea that sabotaging is most often an inside job. We very often point to the outside and think that others are, it's others' fault that they don't see how amazing we are and how unique we are. But the reality is, most sabotage happens inside. It's a self-sabotage job. And so self-confidence is one of those things. If you are not confident in your capabilities, why would you expect somebody else to be confident in them, right? And that comes with negative self-talk, the voice we have in our own heads and that we listen to constantly. So there is always a fine line between critical self-talk, which is necessary so that we see where we lack and where we need more guidance, more education, or we can do better. But most of us very heavily engage into negative self-talk and then turn it into self-criticism and are often harder on ourselves than others are. Then, for example, natural talents is such an amazing example for me, where we don't even recognize that there is a talent we are born with and fail to acknowledge that we are born with that, right? It's imprinted in our DNA. And how often does it happen that you do something on your daily basis and you think that was just something average you have done, and others tell you, how did you do that? Yeah. Well, probably because your natural talents were at work, right? It feels natural to you. Or that we constantly compare ourselves to others, self-comparison. We constantly think what we are worse or slower or not so good at, instead of thinking not just what we are better, what are we different at, right? What is something that I can offer that nobody else out there can offer? And last but not least, a self-discipline. Like it or not, you can only leverage your fear advantage with the discipline to, first of all, identify it, and then also to communicate it again and again and again and again, because the world out there is noisy. And if you don't constantly share your messaging with the world, it has nothing to do with your listeners. They
Yeah.
are just in a very noisy world. You need to stand out, and you need to have the confidence to promote yourself and talk about yourself and market yourself. Because guess what? If you don't do it, nobody else might do it.
Yeah. That's the story of the speaker world too. I will
Yeah.
share this. This when you're talking, I was thinking also about Clifton and Marcus Buckingham, where they, the Gallup organization really says lean into your
Mhm.
strengths. In fact, focus only on your strengths.
Mhm.
Don't even worry about wallowing in trying to make your weaknesses better. But if you're going to do that, and I agree with that, I subscribe to that, then I think you've got to surround yourself with people who can help fill in some of those other things that they're awesome at. And Brant and I sort of laugh about this because we are very different. I think probably people who don't know us probably think we're a lot alike, and we are in
Mhm.
some ways. There's some overlap, but one of my strengths for sure is being detailed and organized. That the logistics of things I'm just good at, and I like that. I've never left my house ever in the history of my life without making my bed. Everything is dotted and T's are crossed, and I love all that infrastructure. Where Brant is way more on the creative side and thinks strategically and 30,000 foot, where mine's a lot more granular. And what's funny about that is I was always, I think, beaten up a little bit in the early part of my career. I was 21 years at Hard Rock. My first 5 years, where as a staff member and a manager. But then when I started to take over the department, boy, I was a workaholic, 14, 16 hours, like you were talking about, Sylvie. I had no problem doing that. I liked doing that. And my thought was, I'm going to use this to my benefit. I'm going to use this because I need as many W's in my win column as possible so that I could get promoted or get more responsibility. So I, in fact, could impact and influence. But at some point, I knew I was going to have to think strategically. And this is going
Mhm.
around, Brant, to what you were saying. I think I didn't fake it, but I think I got into that role. And now you get exposed if you're not thinking long term, thinking strategically versus just on the present here and now, the nuts and bolts. So I feel
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
I used my strength for a while, but I got to a point that I could tap into this world, but it wasn't really my strength. And so I think when
Mhm.
you and I'm talking to you, Brant, whenever we started to do things like Certified Rock Star or Thoughts That Rock or Buki Call, our book discovery app, thank goodness that we have two very different ways of looking at things. We have our own fair advantages that I think I'm basically
Mhm.
saying you complete me, Brant. You complete me, is what I'm saying.
You had me at hello.
You had me.
Uh,
Oh. Is this
listen,
an engagement
It
ceremony
is.
going
It
on
is.
on it? Oh my god! And I'm gonna join it. I'm so excited for you guys.
well, listen, you've shared just so many incredible points in this episode, Sylvie. One of the things that that we learned while I was doing this certification on the psychology of leadership is that there's really only three ways to change your beliefs.
Mhm.
The first is to sort of search through your own history for evidence that you've done something similar and have been successful. Right, that's the first way to change a belief. The second is through vicarious learning, right, which is watching somebody else that has done something that you want to do and see that it's possible, and
Yeah.
thus believing that it is possible for you. But the third way is by listening to a trusted, respected resource,
Mhm.
and that's you.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted you here today, for people to understand that we all have a fair advantage. But it takes some work. It takes some
Mhm.
work to
Mhm.
figure it out. And if you're willing to do the work, you will reap the benefits of letting the world know what your fair advantage is. But if you don't, then you can't expect to see that level of success
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
waiting for you unless you're willing to do the work. And when there are 15 different things that are involved with your fair advantage, I mean, listen, I already have your book. I've already started reading your book, but since your book is like 8 times the size of my book, number one, I think it's an incredible deal on Amazon, because I was thinking your book was going to be like $200 because there's a lot of words in that book.
Yes,
I'm going to
I
tell you
told
right.
you, German in my work ethic.
Yes,
German
you
in my
are.
work ethic.
She left no stone unturned in this book. I am telling you flat out right now. My book looks like, a Hare Krishna pamphlet next to her magnus opus that she has released into the world. But it is something that I'm going to go back and start to dive through the other points that I need to be really clear on, because as we are out there in a very competitive market, you have to know these things if you want your fair advantage to be clear and beneficial. And I think that that's something that, unfortunately, most people will not put in the effort. Yeah. But for those of us that do, it's why we see the levels of success, I think, that that are due to us from all of that hard work. So thank you so much for coming and sharing. If people want to know a little bit more, maybe stare at your beautiful face for a few minutes, where should we send them on the internet?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, there is a website out there, sylvie.giusto.com. Not the easiest name, but even if you type it with all sorts of typos, in the meantime, you should somehow get to my website. I encourage you to take the free perception audit that I have on my website. You find my books on Amazon, and you find me everywhere on social media. And I have an idea. We didn't talk about that, but since we talked about your fun facts, what about the following idea? Wherever you post this episode or snippets of it on social media, if people comment on your posts and share their fun fact
Love it
with us, then I'm going to send them a free copy. How about that?
Oh, come on.
Yes.
Now we're talking.
But, keep it appropriate. Please keep it appropriate. It's the internet. We only want to hear the appropriate fun facts for
Sylvie,
the other version.
I'm just going to tell you this. We have 6 listeners. So I don't know if you're ready for that level of...
How many should we give away? Or do you want to pick the top 5 fun facts? The funniest 5 fun facts, okay?
We'll do that.
Yeah, let's
top
do
5.
That. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But
they got to be real, too. Don't give no bullshit fun facts. You're making up to try to get a free book.
Yeah, we might ask for proof. Yes. Let's do that. Brent and Jim, it is such an honor to be with you. I love you guys. I adore you guys. You're 2 of the smartest friends that I have, 2 of the best podcast hosts that I know. And thank you very much for the invite. But now, if anyone has contact into the network of George Clooney or into Gucci, I'm ready, because I checked that life goal off my list.
I can 100%.
Here's my George Clooney impression.
That's right. Is that the bad Batman impression?
And if not, I have alternatives. Brad Pitt or whoever.
Yeah.
One or 2 of you.
We'll get them in there for you, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You know we love you, and we are just so thankful that our audience got a chance to finally get some wisdom from the legendary Sylvie Giusto. Thank you so much.
Rock on. She's the best.
Hey, rock stars. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and listen, we know how busy you are, and grabbing those little nuggets of wisdom that can amp up your life are super hard to come by. So we hope this episode helped you enough for you to maybe subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and a review so that we can continue to grow the show.
Thus That Rock is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network and also supports Cannonball Kids Cancer and their fight for finding and funding treatment options for kids who have run out of options. They're amazing. Their work is incredible. To learn more, please go to cannonballkidscancer.org.
Finally, if you're interested in having Brant or Jim or both of us speak at your event, whether as a virtual webinar or an in-person conference keynote or mastermind, contact us directly at thoughtsatrock.com.
Until next time,
rock on!